In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to select all the records from our database. I'm going to first log into phpMyAdmin so you can see the records that we just inserted in our last lesson. So this is phpMyAdmin. If I go to WebD 153 and click on Browse Over Users, you can see that I have two values here. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is open up my text editor. I'm going to create a new file, and this will be called select.php because all we're going to do is select data and display it inside our web page. So inside select.php, I'm just simply going to open up PHP, and the first thing I'm going to do is include the connection script. If you happen by chance to be looking at this video first this week, all our connection script does is create a variable that equals a new instance of PDO, PHP data objects, with our connection string for localhost, our database, and our username and password for MAMP. If you're on XAMPP, you would remove the password of root and leave it blank. So anyway, by including that, I'm ensuring that I'm able to connect to my database for the duration of this initial script. One thing to remember that we've covered in the first couple of weeks was there is something called require. It does the same thing as include, except it will throw a fatal error if connection.php does not exist. So I'm keeping it at include now just for simplicity. And now we can go ahead and get all of our data. So we'll need an SQL statement that calls this table users. In this case, I might do something like $SQL equals DBH for database handle, and we're going to use the prepare method inside the PHP object, PHP data object connection. So I'll do select all from users. Now if you recall, I only have two fields inside this table, ID and full name. You should get in that practice of calling out the actual fields that you need. Something like ID and then full name. That way you can be more specific about which values you want. So in this case, I'm going to keep it at select ID and full name from users. And now I can go ahead and get ready to display my values. The first thing I'll need to do is to execute my prepared statement. I can do this by simply putting the arrow for an instance and this method, execute. And when I do that, we'll have executed the query on the database. Now it's just a case of simply displaying my values. So I can do something like a while loop. Well, I can assign each row a variable called row equals, and we'll use, in this case, we'll do the variable SQL fetch. So we're using the fetch method this time. I'll show you many methods, but this is one of the easiest ones that you can use. So if I do this, all I would need to do now is create values for each element. So ID would equal either row 0, whoops, or it might equal row ID. You can use these things interchangeably. Okay, so if we were to grab the name field next, we could say something like full name equals row 1, or it could be equal to full name equals row full name. So it's up to you how you want to pull your values, but the fact is now that I have them, I can simply output them. You know, if it were a lot of data, I might use a table, but I'll just echo out full name and then maybe an HTML break tag, just like this. So I'm going to click Save, and then I'll go to select.php inside my local host, and you see there I have my values. So let's add another record. I'll do insert.php, and I'll put in Tom Jones. Hit enter. Now I'll go to my select script and hit refresh. And now we have to troubleshoot that briefly. So let's go to our database, click Browse, click Insert and make sure it's there. So I'm going to go now to Insert just to do a little troubleshooting in front of you. These are opportunities for learning right now, which are really sort of special for me to do this in front of you, because you can see that sometimes things can happen that are a little bit odd. So I'm going to go to Insert and figure out why Tom Jones didn't get in the database. And this will take some practice and some experience, but here we go. We're going to insert into user's full name, values, full name, and I'm going to once again I'm going to click print R SQL error info. I kept that error message commented out. And now I can hit this, and that will submit, and I have another error syntax near Jones. Guess what I didn't do? I changed the values of my variable, and somehow it got saved. So now when I hit refresh, my cached values will be in the browser, and I can hit this, and now I should have Tom Jones in the database, and I do. And I go to phpMyAdmin and I have Tom Jones. So this is how you can select data from the database and display it. So all I did in this case was to connect to PHP, connect to my database by including the connection.php. Then I wrote a structured query language statement, select ID full name from users. When in actuality I'm not even using ID because the user wouldn't care about the ID. So I'm preparing the statement, I'm executing it, and then I'm working with the while loop. I'm saying, hey, as long as there are values in SQL fetch, let's get them equal to the row. So on the first row, we get Chris Secor. Now if we look at our database right here, we have Chris Secor, then Kim Atkins, then Tom Jones. So the while loop is a nice way to grab data as long as you understand that the row is going to have all the values that you selected for each and every record. So all I did was extract full name because it was the number 1 row, or second row because it's array based, 0 indexed, and I just outputted the full name with a break tag. And that's how we can select data in MySQL with PHP data objects.